So big welcome to everyone. This is MenTalk2 Presents, and I am really chuffed with today's guest, which is Mark Williams. So Mark, first of all, welcome to MenTalk2 Presents. And this is a bit of a special episode, really, because today is International Father's Mental Health Day. And Mark, I believe you were quite pivotal in getting that into everybody's calendar, were you not?
Yeah. No, I started with an idea in 2016, and then the following year, I got involved with Dr. Danielle Singley, who's in California, and we got a couple of doctors around the world now. So yeah, it's gone, and it's actually registers on the Time to Change calendar, so it's official day now as well, which is exciting. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and we're seeing so many more businesses that are talking about it, talking about paternal mental health. Or talking about that this kind of topic, and I guess take us back. What started the campaigning for you? What was the motivations behind it?
Yeah. So I'm from the Valleys, a very mining community, a very tough community. People say, first generation not going to ground. My grandfather, my uncles, all of them were all coal miners. Never talked about mental health. Never had that conversation. And even though I got a very close family, that conversation was never there. So if you had a problem, let's go to the pub, let's go and sort it out, like that sort of thing. So I didn't know at the time I had an undiagnosed disorder called ADHD. I was only diagnosed at 40 years of age. And with anyone who knows what ADHD is, it is a disorder. It doesn't go away. And it does interlink with anxiety, depression, OCD, obviously dyslexia and other things. So sometimes if you manage your ADHD, you're actually coping with the other stuff better, if that makes sense, So I had a lot of low self-esteem in school. Unfortunately, don't blame the teachers, but I used to have a clip across the ear, and I tried to get out the class because I couldn't concentrate, and I was oversensitized. So, and loads of things happened during school. But luckily for me, I went to the youth club at 8. My mother dragged me there and gave me a lot of confidence, and I was pretty good at sport, and became a British champion, national champion, and I was pretty good at football and table tennis, all that stuff. So it did level out. Then, unfortunately, the rave scene started kicking in 1990, and then I ended up in a lot of drugs, alcohol, which I'm not really proud to say, but it changed my life really in 1997, really. I met my wife, Michelle, and then I went down to sales and marketing, So I was probably earning more money then 20 years ago than I am now, which is, but I didn't get a purpose in sales like I have now, if that makes sense,
Okay.
So,
no, I was just going to say, and then your son obviously entered entered the world, and talk through that kind of experience of becoming a father for the first time.
Yeah, we just got married, and like I said, a house, we had nice cars, all that stuff, all the material stuff. And then worst part of my life really was when, after 22 hours labour, I remember doctors come rushing in and they said, "Mr. Williams, your wife needs an emergency C-section. We need to get down to theatre." And it was the first time I actually had a panic attack. Never had a panic attack ever before in my life before. And because I honestly thought that my wife and baby was going to die in that situation. And what I seen in the labour ward, obviously, what we know now is PTSD. So people say, what's PTSD? Well, PTSD is an anxiety disorder, either witnessing or experiencing a life-threatening event. And that could be mild, moderate to severe, and obviously the nightmares and flashbacks. I certainly had nightmares thinking my wife and baby had died, but not half as bad as some of the fathers I've talked to over the years. Michelle was diagnosed with postnatal depression, but we believe the symptoms of the PTSD do overlap, and that includes with fathers. And then, expect me back in work in 2 weeks. There was no money, I was self-employed. Looking after your wife who was in crisis team. My wife didn't want to be here anymore at that time. And then I didn't initially bond with my son initially. I think that bond attachment really grew, because I was home, skin to skin, without even knowing it, releases oxytocin and all that stuff. So, but my personality totally changed in that first year of fatherhood. Totally. I felt so lonely and isolated during that time. And I was going back to the old coping skills I've always used, which was alcohol as well.
Yeah, and we hear a lot, don't we? Postnatal depression has long been thought of being a female-only disorder. You always hear it being discussed around mums. And I know I've spoken openly about the fact that I suffered from postnatal depression as a dad, as a new dad. And talk us through some of the, I suppose, the recent research as well. It's more common than a lot of people think, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I was an advocate, I used to come across mums who had postnatal depression 30 years ago and were never diagnosed or screened. And what happens, like dads now, they go into other services at crisis points sometimes. I was never diagnosed with PND or PTSD, but certainly when I look back, if I was screened and supported, I would have been. But looking back, up to 39% of young fathers want to support their mental health. That's the Mental Health Foundation. NCT, 38% were concerned about their mental health. And even November did a report last year that said that, 3/4 of dad uses stress, said it was stressful. And as you know, with stress, that can lead to anxiety and on to depression. And also the biggest killer in men under 45 or 50 now, is suicide. So, this early prevention stuff should just really be in place for all parents, regardless of gender, really.
Yeah, so it's really important that we start having more of these conversations, don't we? And I think there's recent research to say that sort of men are more likely to discuss mental health conditions or mental health problems with maybe colleagues in the workplace rather than their friends and family at home. And I guess becoming a new dad, and from my experience, I would have probably more than likely spoken to somebody in my workplace as a colleague, not a manager, but as a colleague, rather than at home, because to me, my son's mum was going through exactly the same as what I was going through, and it felt like a burden. Is that kind of, would you say that's common in terms
Yeah,
of?
definitely, absolutely, because up to 50% of dads will actually get depression looking after their partners with postnatal depression. But we know that, sometimes there's only dad who is struggling, and that can impact on mum's mental health, and also have a big impact on our child's development. And I think in the workplace, we've seen a massive difference over the last 10 years, with mental health awareness. But perinatal mental health needs to be taught about more in the workplace, because a lot of dads, you've got a dad with bipolar, schizophrenia, clinical depression, ASD or ADHD, borderline personality disorder, all these different disorders. You put the lack of sleep in that as well, and then the baby comes along, the transition of parenthood, and even testosterone actually lowers during this time as well for fathers as well. So there is an element of the hormones as we've always thought about postnatal depression. So the only way I explain to my friends and family or friends, I would say, is, if dad wasn't, if there's no pregnancy or birth, he wouldn't be struggling in that first year of fatherhood. There could be loads of reasons. Dads struggle to bond with their babies, as we know as well. So dads feel guilty. Dads worry about social services. Dads worry about loads of things. But as we know, I feel the workplace is a big area to go into, because health professionals, as we know, sometimes are so overwhelmed with certain things. The workplace, the dad has to go back to the workplace, only sometimes. So, asking the managers to ask the new dads, have a conversation about their mental health, so I think it's really important in the workplace that we should be asking new dads as well.
Yeah, I think we hear a lot from workplaces around when you have the conversation where your manager. I remember a manager saying to me when I'd gone back to work, and the first question was, "How's mum?" And at no point did they ever ask how I was. And that's not to take away, and I must put a caveat in that, in terms of that she worked at the business as well, so it wasn't completely out of the inappropriate to kind of ask, but at no point was I asked about that. And I think that's an area that businesses will need to kind of put more focus on. But I suppose one thing I'm really keen to pick up on in terms of what you mentioned there is men go through a hormonal change, or go through an altering in terms of a natural balance within their hormones when becoming a dad. Is that right?
Yeah. It's not much loads of research there, but it's definitely that testosterone, as we know, with lack of testosterone, that can cause fatigue and depression on its own. Big factors, I would say, dads who've had a past history of anxiety, depressions, or traumas. It could be a lot of things, triggered off during this time as well. We got fatherhood has totally changed from my father, you know, in social media, the pressures are different now as well. You know, we got more stay-at-home dads, single dads, you know, same gender parents as well. So maternity services, unfortunately, haven't caught up with the times yet in certain areas, and that puts more pressure on the family members. So, like you said, you just mentioned, dads are less likely to open up to their partners or their family members because, and this has always been my work, it's nothing taking the attention away from the mum at all. What you're saying is it does actually impact the mum if dad is not getting that support as well. And I know from a personal experience, I didn't tell my wife anything because I didn't want to impact on her mental health even more. So I suppressed those feelings and then use all these negative coping skills, which now I've replaced with more positive coping skills like mindfulness, CBT. And what I want to stress is with mental health recovery, it is a hard process. It's an ongoing thing I've done for 10 years. Like any recovery, it's hard, but if you put that time and effort in, like physical health, you will get much better mental health, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. And just
I will say, what works for me might not work for you as well. It's finding out what works for you as well, which is, you know, if you speak to a counsellor, you know, and you don't get that report, try a different counsellor.
Yeah.
I mean, make sure you keep getting that help.
It's a really important message, isn't it? I have my coping strategies that I use and I'm a big advocate of, but they don't work for everybody. And it's a really, really important message that we should be sort of putting out there, that go and find what works for you, because once you do find it, you'll find a huge benefit from it. And in a way, it's never going to be easy. And I suppose it shouldn't be easy either. It shouldn't be, because you wouldn't appreciate if it was just an easy kind of flick of the switch and then everything's okay. It's good. I kind of quite like looking back on my journey to see how far I've come and know that it's taken years to do and is still ongoing. To be able to be in a position where we can share what we're kind of talking about today. And so,
absolutely,
to finish off then, what do you hope for perinatal mental health? A massive question, I guess, but what are your hopes? You've been at this for 10 years. You've obviously seen a massive increase in discussion and interest, and but what does the next 10 years look like?
I think 10 years has been the first. It's been up and down. You know, we changed policies with NHS England and Welsh Government recently, and but the World Health Organization, we want to make sure that fathers are included in the World Health Organization and nice guidelines, you know, as well. So we're going to report out in September now, so we can show the commissioners and MPs and the World Health Organization and say, look, you need to look at all parents, you know, adoptive parents, everyone really. So over the next 10 years really is looking at more research. You know, I can tell you, you know, we've talked about suicide. People don't realize that a father around the perinatal period up to 47 times more risk of suicide as a dual diagnosis than any other time in a man's life. So he's at more 20% of risk of being at risk of suicide as a non-father, you know. It's because loads of things happen during this time as well, in a short space of time as well. So, you know, like I said, you know, 600,000 male suicides every year. I believe, and I'm putting this on record, I believe if we can actually lower that by 5 to 10% at least, if we start looking at fathers' mental health and dads more.
Amazing. Well, look, Mark, it's been a pleasure as always. I absolutely love spending time with you.
No, Dan, it's a pleasure you, because you need a lot of bragging up as well, where you've been and what you're doing now, and we need more dads like you to speak up. And at the end of the day, there's nothing to be ashamed of, as we both know. Like,
yeah, you're far too kind. So cheers, guys. Thanks a lot for listening to the latest episode of MenTalk2 Presents. We will have more guests coming shortly, so keep an eye out. Speak soon.